episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor. Welcome everybody again to another episode of our show with another really fascinating guest for you today, helping to create a better tomorrow on many different fronts. And today we have the honor of being joined by Serge Deppo, who is founder of the NATO Innovation Hub, as well as the Human Sciences Project Officer at the NATO Transformation Command. Obviously for people that are unaware, the NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is an intergovernmental military alliance between 28 European countries, 2 North American countries, formed back in 1949, and constitutes a very intricate system of security, collective security, where ultimately independent member states agree to mutual defense in response to attack by external parties. The NATO headquarters are located over in Belgium. And the Innovation Hub is this fascinating community where experts and innovators from everywhere within the NATO system collaborate to tackle various NATO challenges and align solutions, and the engine of the NATO Innovation Network and its various entities leverage various innovation models to continue with agile technological development. Mr. Deppo spent time in a variety of roles in the Belgian military, including those of platoon leader, training officer, senior officer, course instructor, and international defense planning officer. He has a Master of Arts in Military Applied Sciences at Belgium's Royal Military Academy, a degree in Advanced Military and Operational Studies from the Royal Higher Institute for Defense in Belgium. All that being said, Serge Deppo, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to come talk to us for a little while.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's a pleasure having you, and I'd love to start things off like we typically do by basically handing you the floor for a few minutes. If you could just further take some time to introduce yourself, everything from sort of where you grew up, how you got involved in military service, and a little bit of your path into the NATO organization. I think that'd be a great way to start things off.
All right, so you said a good deal about it already, you know, in a speed mode, saying where I've been studying and what I've been doing in the past decades. But since you are asking where I was born, so I was born in Italian and Belgium, right? With father is Italian, mother is Belgian, which, as I would say, the internationality has had a lot of impact on my life, I think, because I was born like that, you know, as a kind of a second generation immigrant. And that really drove me towards the international way of doing business. And you mentioned the military, my military career, and definitely the military operations, something that I really was interested in from the outset. And it's really blended into the international aspects and got me into NATO, because this is where those two things do meet: internationality, international relations, and military operation. And that's really a thing that I like a lot, to figure out how different nations, how different culture can get on together, can collaborate to resolve problems. And definitely that's one of the things the military has to do once in a while, to solve difficult crises, and that's really tough. But in an international context, it's even tougher. And I think that's the challenge is really something that is interesting to be being part of, and you make it happen as bringing a solution. You get a lot of satisfaction because it makes a difference. Now, another thing that I think is important to me is the aspect of the human science and specifically psychology.
Yep.
So I've always been fascinated by the reasons why people do what they do. To a level, this almost became an obsession. You know, I really try to understand the people, try to figure out how collaboration could be better, how we organize ourselves could be better. And so at the end of the day, it's a big part of the job that I had, and the one that I have now. It's really about that, bringing people with very different motives and reasons and background, and figure a way to have them efficiently collaborate.
Absolutely.
So I had 26 years of active duty, after which I continued really on the same track and became NATO civil servant in the Innovation Hub, as you mentioned.
And we know NATO, as I said in the intro, sort of the general organization. Obviously with this headquarters in Belgium, and here we are, Italian in Belgium. But at the same time, the ACT Innovation Hub, I believe, is located here in the United States on the East Coast. Talk a little bit about sort of the history of it and how sort of the relationship between the NATO Allied Command, your organization, and then sort of the United States presence component of it sort of works together.
Yes, so obviously as an international organization, NATO has, I would say, a foot in every nation in some way, and the Allied Command transformation is the only footprint from NATO on this continent, right? So, I mean, it's justified because NATO needs that. NATO needs presence in its allied nations, but also because the kind of business we do over the US is very important. The Transformation Command is that part of NATO that is really taking care of the future. And I would say if you would want to nickname Allied Command Transformation with something else, it should be Futures Command, compared to our sister command, which is in Belgium, and which is called Allied Command Operations, which I think is self-explanatory. At the Transformation Command, we are looking at tomorrow's operation. Our job, or the job of the command, is really to understand what the environment will be in the future. And I'm talking about 2-3 decades ahead. Try to figure out what are the future challenges and come up with a plan to be better prepared. And so we are doing things like strategic foresight, plans, policies on the conceptual level, but also developing new capabilities. So we are really starting from scratch on developing new solutions that should be used in a decade by the NATO forces and the NATO nation. And so it also includes the education and training aspects, because a new thing does not count. It's not just a piece of equipment. It's much more than that. And definitely from my angle of approach, the human dimension of everything that is new is extremely important. So we're also looking at those aspects from the Transformation Command. And so by doing so, it's interesting to realize that when you look into the future 2 decades ahead, the scope of what could happen is extremely wide, and it goes much beyond and outside the traditional military skill set or even the government skill set. It goes everywhere. It goes into science and technology. It goes definitely deeply into sociology and society. And to be able to understand and develop solutions in those fields, the in-house expertise is not enough. So everyone in NATO Transformation Command has to reach out, find experts in many different topics that they might never have about before, because this is what the future is bringing in front of them, and they need to prepare for it. And so reaching out to external expertise is always been a very important thing, but also a challenge for the ACT people. And basically the Innovation Hub is a response to that. The Innovation Hub was created to ease that collaboration with outsiders.
And continuing along those lines, spend a little time at the Innovation Hub website. You have a broad range of research activities: autonomous systems, information, disinformation, human initiative, cyber. A lot going on. Obviously, I don't expect you to go into all these, but I'd love to start off with one that I think is quite timely and sort of fits into what you were saying earlier about just understanding people, communication, and that is a project that you have called Extended Hand, which is focused on cross-cultural interaction and communication. Introduce us a little bit to this program, if you would.
Yes, so that program started in the first part of the operation in Afghanistan, and everyone's familiar with it, I guess. When Western troops operate in foreign areas, the dimension of cultures and the dimension of local society and the dimension of collaboration with the local authorities and populations is extremely important. Lack of cooperation, lack of understanding is really bringing everything in jeopardy. And even if you realize that saying it is not solving a problem, really bringing solutions is a challenge. And it's not that, oh yeah, all right, I have developed a solution, it works here, will work somewhere else at another time. No, it's always being focusing on those human aspects of an operation that's important. And so it was, I think in 2009 that the commander of the operation in Afghanistan sent a request to NATO that eventually landed in a high command transformation to figure out solutions for that. At that time, the Innovation Hub did not exist yet, because the Innovation Hub was formally set up in 2012. And so because of my position at that time, and you mentioned it, human sciences project officer, so basically the thing that were heavy on human aspects were falling on my desk. And so it really became my main project for many years, and almost as soon as I was in Allied Command Transformation. And so we were basically trying to collect best practice from everywhere, consulting nations, figuring out what was happening in Afghanistan, what the nations were doing. And in the middle of the process, the Innovation Hub was created. And this project actually became the first product of the Innovation Hub. So the Innovation Hub and Extended Hand have a story that's been unfolding together. It's not even in parallel. It was at the beginning the same trajectory, because it was the first and only project of the Innovation Hub when everything started. And so it gave us the applying to this project the techniques that have been evolving over time of open innovation. Applying to the project really gave us the best experts in the world in that problematic, which of course goes beyond just the military aspect of it and the Afghanistan aspect of it. It's a world issue to have collaboration in crisis, or just collaboration at all between different cultures, different organizations. So we had the best experts come to advise us in an open way, open workshops in which we would welcome everyone. And a solution really emerged out of that. You need to realize that for many good reasons, it's really difficult to enter in efficient dialogue with foreign culture. And one dimension is security. So I'm in Afghanistan. To understand Afghanistan, I just have to talk to the Afghan, of course, but it's a country at war. You cannot just go on street and start chatting with the people. So actually someone come and say, we do it online. We do it online, and we are talking to people in places where it's very risky, but because it's happening online, there's no risk to the participants. And so it was really interesting, because I think it was really a unique thing, and we started to figure out how do we apply this to NATO. And basically it proved to be extremely efficient to do that. And actually the ones who had developed the initial solution are from Penn State University.
Yep.
Because in Penn State University, sociology professor Sam Richards was in charge of a course that was called, if I remember well, race relations.
Yep.
And so they progressively specialize in conflict resolution between different cultures. All right. At the beginning, mainly focused on the US, but then grew to be an international thing, and see how all the cultures of the world can be in contact, and how conflicts can be mitigated or resolved through that methodology. And they had started to develop that online. And we're actually working with, in the Middle East, between Israel, Palestinians, and organizing dialogues between people who basically hated each other, and it proved to be efficient. And so this is what we really imported into the NATO environment. And it became really a very efficient way to do it, because that actually, from a compound deployed in operation, you cannot talk to people across the gate, but you can talk to them through online dialogues, you know. But the science of Penn State University World in Conversation Center is that it cannot be just a chat. Anyone like you and me are doing now, we can chat over Zoom. That everyone can do that. But basically, if you just let it go, it will be random chat. And most of it might be pleasant, but actually it's not getting us much far away from what we were at the beginning. Definitely, if we have, we don't understand one another. And even worse, if there is some conflict topics between you and me. And so what they were doing at Penn State is to bring expert facilitator to ease up the dialogue and train basically both parties into understanding each other. And so this is what we have developed for the NATO troops, is to get them not only in contact with the culture they need to collaborate with, but also to have in the room a professional who knows what has to be said, what has not to be said, and how to guide those two communities into an efficient and productive dialogue. And so each session is really efficient at getting those two groups closer, but also what we were doing on the military side, that the military who were in those dialogues would actually take not one dialogue, they will take a series through which every time they would improve a little bit their ability to communicate. And so there is a curriculum that will go from first contact, breaking the ice, talking about random topic, to the end of the training that would be being able to address the most difficult topic on which we don't agree, and still keep the dialogue open. So it's really about deconflicting the situation through dialogue. And definitely it's a process, and it cannot happen just by random talks of two parties. You need someone to guide you. And so what we had is that after dialogue that is actually still running with other nations, that's 90 minutes, the facilitator would debrief the military on how it went, what went well, what went good, and set objectives for the next. And so you try to make your point about this, or you seem to be upset about that point they said. So think about it. So next week, for the next dialogue, you will actually improve your communication and understanding skills, so that basically you will make it easier, right? And that's the whole Soviet extended. And when it started, it immediately got a lot of support. And so we had 12 NATO nations actively participating in the program, and as many as Afghan and the the other side, to maintain a weekly dialogue with each of the NATO individual participating, and they were in small groups. But so it was really about tens and tens of dialogue on a weekly basis every day, and I was just discussing with them, and they said that they are still running with many other nations now. So as a NATO military, you can say, I would like to understand the culture in India. All right, so the network has developed all over the planet, and we can support that. Now it's not piloted by NATO or me now, because it's kept like we do in the Like-Minded Transformation. We develop a solution, and when it's ready, we hand it over to the users. Well, the users are really running that, all right? So we still keep an eye on it, and I'm really proud of that first product of ours, but it's running on its own.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and you know, we definitely need more of this type of communication in the world today. But now, you know, shifting now a little bit because of you know, we spend a lot of time focusing on technologies like artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, and so forth. Another fascinating research initiative you have at the ACT Innovation Hub is something called cyber psychology, where you're realizing that, hey, yes, it's human to human communication, but we're a world of human to machine or human to cyber. Talk a little bit, because this is really a very cutting edge, advanced discipline, very new. Talk a little bit about what cyber psychology is all about and how you're utilizing that.
Yes, definitely. There is no topic out of bounds for the Innovation Hub. We would tackle whatever we are asked to tackle by NATO, and so we can get anything. But still, we tend to be making a big difference when it comes to topics that are bridging different disciplines. All right, we can take cyber alone, but there are people who are expert in cyber that might actually do it better than we do. But when it comes to a bridging idea like cyber psychology, which is really the interfacing between the humans and the cyber environment, this is typically what we are good at, because we are creating big communities, and as a rule, we want it to be full of diversity. And so, if we tackle a cyber problem, we will not just talk to cyber experts. We will bring into the recipe human sciences experts, but also engineers, because everything touches everything. And definitely, when you look towards a future solution, you want to consider all the aspects. Again, bringing just a piece of the solution would not solve the problem. We need to consider all the aspects. And so the kind of rule that we share with the people, for any project, we will go into the cyber domain, the machines domain, the human domain, and the military domain. And we want around the table to be representatives of all of these specific domain of expertise, so that we at least hear from them. And even when we talk about cyber psychology, you hear really the human and the cyber side. We will bring engineers also, and obviously the military, because they are our customer. And so now this is why we really got the cyber psychology as a priority. At that point, when we started it, I thought for a while that we had invented that theme, that coined the name of cyber psychology, but other guys smarter than us, actually in our community, had already started to work on that not so long before. So we continued that, and it's really exploring what is the human dimension of the cyber environment. And I think it really focuses on what are the people who are actually important to solve cyber issues, and immediately, and everyone agrees on that. It's not about only problems of nerds who understand coding, all right? It's also about people who understand how the society interacts with the cyber environment. And it's definitely is not new, because you hear it everywhere. In cybersecurity, the weak link is the human, right? So this wasn't new at all. But the bridge between the technology side and the society side and the human side, it wasn't very strong. And this is what we focused on, understanding how it works. And we pinpointed at some very important topic. Obviously, the fact that some would forget that you need other disciplines around the table when you want to solve cyber issues. You can just not only talk to the computer people, but also that those who eventually make decisions are not cyber experts. And they are not human science experts either. They are decision makers who are not experts in any of the two disciplines. And so educating basically the users, but also the decision maker, has become a high priority. And it links back to today in data science, for example. That's closely linked, data science, artificial intelligence. So how do the people in decision-making position understand how to use the technology for the greater good? And that's not a done deal at all. Technology progresses extremely fast, faster than what we we train the people basically. So that's what a big point that is addressed by the cyber psychology project of ours.
Excellent. Serge, one thing that I noticed on the Innovation Hub is that you're very active in partnering with not just educational institutes but private industry. And I'd love to point at a couple of these initiatives, because we do get a lot of sort of the next generation that listens to the show and they're very interested. Might be starting out in college and getting involved. Not sure what they're doing yet, but you have a really interesting program called I4D, which stands for Innovation for Defense, where you partner with students at universities. You mentioned that Extended Hand was developed in collaboration with Penn State, done some other collaborations with Johns Hopkins, Czech Technical University, and various areas of the military medical support and so forth. Talk a little bit about how that works. How do you work with universities, sort of the typical sort of spectrum of interest that the students have? Because I think this is really sort of a fascinating sort of domain that you're offering people that don't exactly know what they're doing yet, but giving these possibilities out to the next generation.
Partnerships with academia. So the Innovation Hub, I always have to tell that to the people, is not a place when you might imagine it's a place or a team of people. No, it's a huge community of people. It's all the people who are willing to help us solve problems. And we are just facilitators, providing of the environment where those people can collaborate. And definitely key actors in that community come from academia. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of ideas, a lot of science, a lot of young people. And that's extremely valuable in our network. Of course, it's not just academia, there is government, there is industry, and there is the public. But so we really want to reach out to all of these and have partnerships with whoever actually is willing to help. Now, what you come to the I4D or H4D, this is a program that was actually developed by our partners from government. So that's another breed of our partners of the other innovation hubs in defense. We'll talk about this maybe later. They developed in the US DoD that program to collaborate with universities on a medium term. So the idea is that a problem from the military is given to a class in university. Okay. And that class will be working over a semester or a year at solving it, right? And in the US, they call it H4D, Hacking for Defense. And when they created that, immediately they shared it with us because our network is really sharing everything and say, hey, do you think NATO could use that? And we looked at it, and obviously, since it was developed for the US audience only, it would need some adjustment to be international. And so we told our American partners, all right, we like the idea very much, but you cannot just copy it into NATO and it would be successful. You need to develop a variant of it and experiment it with the European nations, for example, to be sure it flies. And so what we needed to do is to find universities willing to conduct that experiment and develop an adapted model of it that would fly over the borders of the US. And so we partnered for the first pilot of that with Johns Hopkins University. Mm-hmm. They volunteered to really do that. They liked the idea. They knew about the US DoD program, and they really wanted to be on the international side of it. And so we have called it Innovation for Defense, so that it's not the same, but it's really, you feel the flavor, right? It's just a NATO version of the US way. Now, it's a very good thing because the universities that are now collaborating on that, they really love it. Giving a problem to solve to their students is a model where in the universities where they want to try to train business and innovation. And then there are not so many at the end. And definitely outside of the US that focuses on, we want our students to become entrepreneur and problem solver and be able to find solution quickly to surprising challenges. But the universities that are sensitive to that approach, they love the idea. Now, spearheaded by the Johns Hopkins experiment, several universities from Europe joined, and it was the deal. You know, Johns Hopkins did not do that on their own, and okay, it works. No, they committed to bring the European universities they already knew into the program, and so there are several universities that are collaborating to this program. They might be teaming up between universities or dealing with it just with their own university, and so on a regular basis, we will provide them a list of problems they could solve for us. And what we do from the NATO side is to provide them one expert who guides them, so that they understand what the problem is, they can ask as many questions as they need, and also they can show their products along the way. It's not that they start with a problem statement and 1 year later they come with a solution. They have to consult a lot to be sure they stay on track, and that's basically the application of agile development methodology, which is really an industry standard, to the academic world. We apply the innovation of agile development to all our projects, but there we have it with just class of students. So it starts with NATO presents an issue to solve, and then the students would ask questions, think about it, come back a few weeks later with a few ideas, and the NATO expert will say, well, this one sounds good, this one is not really on track, then why don't you do this? And it happens like that every other week or every 3 weeks. There will be a check by the customer on the NATO side on what they have been doing to be sure they progress. And now that program has delivered very good results already. So we had a cognitive warfare dashboard. We had social media short circuit tool that were developed. So the idea is to be able to detect disinformation and trigger quickly response. We had equipment to monitor the health of the soldier and to inform in real time the military medical authorities to know who actually has health issue, where they are, how to extract them from the difficult situation, for example. So these are a few examples, and we have a lot of classes working on different topics. I'm telling you the ones that have come to fruition, some are ongoing, and sometimes they don't make it because it does happen, you know, of course. You know about innovation.
Yeah.
Most of the time it fails, and you capitalize on the few successes because they are groundbreaking, and so many people are making efforts. They are developing solutions that are good enough, but having the idea and developing the prototype is just the first step in the process. So there's a long way to go behind.
Sure.
We monitor that. And so this is what one of the many ways we partner with academia. And we have a little bit of similar processes going of the type of organizations. And we have also other models going on with academia. So our partners, definitely academia is a big partner. And the other one, we are the innovation hubs in defense in the nations.
Mm-hmm. And segueing from that, obviously, to the industry partnerships, and you have, you know, once again, I tell everybody listening and watching to come visit the site. A lot of initiatives. Can you just, you know, talk a couple of minutes, you know, when it's come to some of these projects, like, you know, ensuring peace in the world in 2040 and stuff like that? Do you work only with sort of the larger industry here, the startups involved, and then I also notice on the there's one part where it says, if you don't find a project you're interested in with NATO, you submit a solution. You ever get any weird solutions, like, you know, somebody wants to make, you know, Antarctica part of NATO, something odd? I just off the top of the head.
So yeah, two things to talk about. First, the funny part of the funky solutions. Yeah, I think at least every week there are a very funny solution that lands in that box where we say anyone send your solutions. All right. But they are good ones, definitely.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's part of the process. And sometimes people are happy to say, oh, in the basket, there was this thing that is really funny. Say, yeah, let's keep it because it relaxes us a little bit in the process of going into serious technology. And then you have a funny thing. Of course, you laugh at it. It's too bad for the person who's through it. Actually, they definitely don't deserve it because no idea is laughable. But yeah, I think that seemed less realistic or a little bit out of scope. Now, how do we handle industry? And so with industry, we have very different ways than what I was describing with academia, for example, because they are really different partners, different entities.
Yep.
But the main way we deal with industry are the NATO Innovation Challenges. So the NATO Innovation Challenge is a public call to solve a problem. And you see, it starts like for the I4D with a problem to solve. And depending on who the receiving audience is, the model might be different. So if we know that academia is willing to solve it, we might go for innovation for defense project. But if we want to go to startups, for example, we will run an innovation challenge. And the innovation challenge is the best way to expose the problem that we want to solve for the very large audience worldwide, actually, and in a way that is totally inexpensive to respond to it. It's very quick for a startup with very little resources to respond to the NATO Innovation Challenge. They just send us an abstract explaining what the solution to the problem is, and they are down selected, and the best solution will be pitching the solution live to a jury. Mm-hmm. And basically it costs just their time and the time they take to develop the presentation, but there is no prerequisite to be participating in that. There is no travel involved because everything could be conducted online, you know, by default it is conducted online. So the entry level is 0. So everyone comes to it. And so it allows very small company to compete, even individuals, but it's not removing the big ones. So big companies are also competing in the NATO Innovation Challenge. And that's probably the most obvious way for industry to engage with us. Now, projects that are not based on the NATO Innovation Challenge are also open to industry because they are open to everyone. Mm-hmm. One thing that is important is that we don't go into the contracting and selection and so on, and the projects are open. So if you are in a company and you are bringing a solution to one of our problems, it will be public. We don't deal in one-on-one negotiation about buying your product. We are dealing into finding the best solution with a community, and so industry is welcome, but not in secrecy. We strictly adhere to the openness of everything that we do. And so if the industry comes and discusses something with us, it's a problem that we have opened up to the whole world. And this solution will also be discussed with their competitors because it's our way to figure out what works. You know, we could be saying, okay, we'll find the best NATO experts to look at it, but often we deal with problems in which we don't have expertise in NATO, and so we put it in the open and say, any expert on the planet, what do you think about that thing? They will teach us, and others might come with a competitive solution, and we learn from them. For their confrontation, we learn and try to figure out what's the best middle solution, because often it's not that someone comes with the fully baked solution. It's about combining different solutions, combining different expertise. And I think it's part of the recipe of innovation is to be able to combine different ingredients, and that's what we want to do. And so there's also a way in which industry can collaborate with us. Now, whenever we at the innovation see solutions starting, we might just push it to someone else in NATO who would just have the contract and make it happen. It really depends. Each case is specific. We have also, winners of the Innovation Challenge often would be hired by NATO for the development of a solution, and often we conduct it at the Innovation Hub if it requires more than just the solution as it was. And this is mostly the case. The solution is offered, it's not exactly what NATO needs. So there's a need to agile development around it, with the developer talking to the user very often, and we run that process. And so there are many different ways in which we interact and collaborate with industry, like with academia, and there's no really hard line between who is collaborating with us. What the difference between a single entrepreneur and a big business at the end? It boils down to having people who can solve an issue collaborate. Excellent.
Serge, anything new coming up? Anything that I've missed that you might want to mention? I mean, you have a tremendous amount in your portfolio, and obviously you're very busy on many fronts now. But new initiatives? Are you going to be giving any talks, conferences? Anything else you want to plug with regard to NATO, the Innovation Hub? Please take the floor.
So that's one thing that is less obvious for the outside observers. The first thing that you see, and which is, I would say, the bulk of what we do, is problem solving, trying to fix known NATO issues and bring a solution, whatever type of solution it might be. It could be just knowledge, just a concept, but often it's really a real solution, hardware, software. We do all those things. But what is a little less obvious is what's behind the scenes, why we do that. All right, that's the question you have not asked me yet. So why do you do that? We do this because we have seen, by addressing problems the traditional way, that we adapt too slow. We face issues, we bring solutions, but the process is too slow. Adaptation of our structure in NATO and the military government is traditionally slow, because it's bulky and because it was designed a long time ago. And,
right.
and everything has been accelerating, but not as fast as government can. And there are very good reasons for that. I mean, we can go into details about how it is like it is, but that's totally reasonable. But we need to be faster in adapting and resolving challenges. And so this is really the main goal of the Innovation Hub, is that the techniques that we are leveraging and developing and improving are spreading all over the NATO nations. And what we do is open innovation and agile development, all right, involving as many people as we can and working user-centric very fast. We want that to spread everywhere. And so when you ask what else do, we really work hard behind the scenes so that the success stories that we are creating by solving specific issues for the customer illustrate how the model is actually efficient and is adopted by others. And so it's been very efficient as a strategy to expand. So we started Innovation Hub formally in 2012. And by that time, no one was talking about open innovation in defense. No one. We invented that. I'm proud about it. It came, NATO is not spearheading usually things because it's following its nations trying to support, but that thing is really came out of our cookpot. Mm-hmm. So what's the problem? How do we speed up adaptation and understanding solution development? We came up with that idea, and it started bottom up in command transformation. And we did that with starting the way I preach. We consulted the whole world. How should NATO innovate? And we had, in that case, it's probably the largest, at least in quantity, collaboration with industry, because we had 50 of the biggest company send their innovation experts to our study and to advise us. And we were asking them, how do you innovate in your organization? And how do you think NATO should emulate your model? And that big group really produced a concept which is really the backbone of what the Innovation Hub is. And from that group, it was not just us, it was an open group. So we had people from every nation, and they went back to the nation and started to apply the same thing. And so the first to create an Innovation Hub, they don't call it that way, but the same model was in the US, and it's now Ensign. You had Morgan Plummer on one of your, so they were they started. They were called MD5 at that time in the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
But so the creator of MD5 was in our group, and he went back to the DoD with the concept, and they finally decided to develop the same one. And then you had several openings, and then we had people looking at our door. So one of the biggest players in innovation defense now in the US is AFWorks. So that's the innovation hub of the Air Force. They called me and said, hey, we want to do like you. Can we discuss best practice? And so we were working together. And we have been doing that with most of what qualify as an open innovation hub in the NATO nations now for defense. So Germany, Portugal, Czech Republic, Italy, and all those together, our network. So we have now 15, I call them innovation hub, even if most of them are not called like that. 15 innovation hub from 11 different nations, and we are the NATO Innovation Network. That's the big thing. So we were asking what's coming next. So what's coming next is that we will have the NATO Innovation Network conference in November.
Okay.
And the first time we do that together. We collaborate on so many different things, but not in a conference. And we have that coming in November.
You got it. So yeah, it's a fascinating portfolio, and it's a fascinating set of initiatives that you have responsibility for, and it's really I wish you the best with all of this moving forward, especially in with everything going on in the world today. But I want to for everybody that's going to be listening to this particular episode on our podcast or watching on our YouTube channel, you've been listening to Serge Deppo, founder of the NATO Innovation Hub, also Human Sciences Project Officer at the NATO Transformation Command. Serge, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come talk to us for a little while, to tell us about what you're doing. Thanks for everything you are doing. And as we say on our show, thank you for helping to create a better tomorrow via all of these innovation initiatives. It's a very, very inspiring story.
Thank you so much. And so the call out that you will have to cut and paste before you say bye-bye. So,
please.
Anyone who is trying to solve an issue that is relevant to NATO, because you have the problem or because you think you have a solution, we are there to help. That's our job, to make it happen. Send us your problems, send us your solution ideas, and we will try to make it happen with you.
And we will put all the links to your profile and obviously NATO Innovation ACT on the bio of the show. So great seeing you, sir.